Hello, everyone. I'm Neena Gopal. Welcome to Global Express. This is where we examine the escalations in conflict, the war of words between the world's powerful and the not so powerful, the impact on our neighborhood, particularly on India. The attack on the ISKCON monk in Bangladesh looks set to spiral into a major irritant between Delhi and Dhaka. The ICC ruling against the Myanmar army chief for human rights abuses against the Rohingya is another hot issue. So is the march into the heart of Pakistan's capital by former President Imran Khan's supporters, led by his wife Bushra Bibi. But this week, it's the Middle East that is front and center. The 14th month long confrontation between Israel and Iran and its proxies could see an end to hostilities on at least one front. After the completely unexpected move by Israel to give in to US pressure and accept a US brokered 60-day ceasefire with Iran's proxy Lebanon, the Lebanese Hezbollah, they've arrived at a separate deal with the Hezbollah, which had stepped in when Hamas-Israel confrontation escalated in Gaza after the Hamas attack on October 7th last year. So where does this leave Hamas? Where does it leave Iran? And is this President Joe Biden's last hurrah? I mean, Trump's team, Mike Waltz, has already, who was kept in the loop on the deal, is already claiming credit for it. So in 60 days, there'll be a risk-averse, Israel-leaning US President-elect Donald Trump in office. And Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has admitted he was arm-twisted into walking back from this confrontation with Hezbollah. There's domestic pressure as well from the 60,000 settlers who've been displaced from settlements along the Lebanese border. But more critically, does this ceasefire have Iran's blessing? Neither Hezbollah nor Tehran were involved in the negotiations directly. And in the long term, it's unlikely to stop Iran or Israel from their ultimate goal, which is the decimation of the other. So there are these are the two nuclear powers in the Middle East, Iran and Israel. And despite the Lebanese ceasefire, it has the potential to go south. Helping us examine whether this confrontation will lead, where this confrontation will lead, are three experts. West Asia strategist and senior journalist Dr. Waiel Awwad joins us today. Based in South Asia since '79, he's covered multiple wars in the Middle East and the Gulf countries, including the 2003 US attack on Iraq, when he was embedded with US troops and was captured but escaped. He's survived a number of attempts on his life while covering Jaffna, Kargil, and Afghanistan. Welcome, Dr. Awwad.
Thank you.
Great.
We also have India's renowned expert on air defense, the highly decorated Lieutenant General Dr. K Saxena, who has been awarded a Param Vishishta Savya Medal, an AVCM, a VCM, BSM, the former DG of Army Air Defense. He's now a distinguished fellow at St. John's and a distinguished visiting fellow at Claus. With a rare insight into the way that wars are being fought today, it's missiles and drone warfare, I would like to welcome you too, Dr. Saxena, General Saxena.
Thank you very much. Very humbling, your introduction.
Also on the show is Dr. Alvite Ningthoujam at the Symbiosis School of International Studies. He served as a consultant at the National Security Council Secretariat in the Prime Minister's office in New Delhi. He's an expert on international security, geopolitics of the Middle East and North Africa, and South Asia, and India's foreign policy and international terrorism. Welcome, Dr. Alvite Ningthoujam.
Good evening, Neena. Thank you so much.
Let's start with the ceasefire that Israel and the Hezbollah arrived at late on Tuesday night. General Saxena, it's been brokered by the US, which led the diplomatic push, as did France. How did the US and France, which has links with Lebanon, manage to pull this off? Was it war fatigue in Israel? After 14 months, the Israeli army is said to be exhausted, fighting a war on two fronts. It's basically could be even buying time till it replenishes forces. There's been a drop in conscription in the Israeli army. And did Hezbollah actually expose the chinks in Israel's armor? Because both Tel Aviv and Haifa were repeatedly targeted by the Hezbollah. In fact, Biden's team was apparently dispatched to begin ceasefire negotiations only after it had helped Israel achieve its military objectives, which is degrading the Hezbollah. What do you have to say about all of this?
Actually, your question is very interesting, and I was thinking about it, and I said it can be best answered in win-win, lose-lose terms. this agreement is actually a win-win for some and a lose-lose for some. And the intricacies of this agreement says it all. First of all, Hezbollah, you hear the statement of their senior Hezbollah leader. He says, victory to the ally of the Almighty with a righteous cause. They have declared victory on this agreement, and you see the jubilant crowd in Lebanon firing celebratory shots and holding the picture of Hassan Nasrallah. The defiance portion of this, they say that victory has been achieved in this war by defeating the Israeli army, IDF. Victory on their front. What Israel says? Israel is also claiming. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said we have pushed back Hezbollah by decades. Secondly, we have reduced their threats of border breaching, short-term missile threat, long-range missile threat, as also a deterrent value of Hezbollah as a strategic threat for times to come, decades to come. They're also claiming victory. What about the
General, so both
yeah,
sides are claiming
yes,
victory, but
and what about
in actual fact, both sides have
and
actually
listen, I will tell you
also.
that. I'll come to that. What about the US? Now, the battered Democratic camp, after their recent debacle in the election, is finally wanting to do something in their lame duck period, as we discussed it last time. You remember the Ukraine war, they allowed suddenly the use of land mines and they allowed the use of long range missiles to give some push, some fire potential to the last leg of Ukraine. And what about
Yeah.
you hear the secretary of the state. What does he say? He says, after years of negotiation, after multiple rounds, we have been able to forge this victorious and ceasefire, which is, and what does President Biden say? This is a permanent solution for
That's right.
cessation of hostilities. Nothing
I
can.
think on that point, we should bring in Dr. Awad, because on the Hezbollah, I mean, they did not participate directly in the negotiations, Dr. Awad. It was a Lebanese speaker, Nabi Berri, who was the mediator. So why
Yes.
did Hezbollah agree to these terms? Was it because Hezbollah felt that it could not be fight the war any longer because it no longer is the threat that it once was? And I mean, 1.4 million Lebanese have been displaced. Some 3,800 Lebanese have died. Was it also because, I mean, they are very popular in Lebanon. They control the parliament and all of that. But is it because they could use these 60 days to regroup, rearm, and then possibly attack again? What can we take from this?
Well, I think there was an agreement for all the sides, including the international community, that there should be a ceasefire no matter what. Therefore, there was a huge diplomatic movement to ensure that there is a ceasefire. Oh, only for many reasons. I think you have compiled the reason in your question, and also the generals also have been answering you. And I can add to that the Israeli internal government having lots of problems. Netanyahu himself is under the trial for many cases against him in the Israeli court, the internal division within his government, and dissents against even reaching a sort of an agreement with Hezbollah. And thirdly, because of the arms that the United States had threatened that they may stop arming him if he does not go for this. So therefore, all this compiled together have forced him, because he put on the table as well, which is a very important and strategic thinking for Netanyahu, is Iran. Iran is the things where he wanted to discuss with the American administration, the next administration, to take Iran. So therefore, it could be a truce. It is a dangerous. It could not last for long. It may be opening again for a regional war. We all depend on the implementation, because the devil lies in the details of the 13 points they have agreed on. This is one of the issues. The second, Hezbollah, the firing from Hezbollah, what Israel thought that when they killed the leaders of Hezbollah, that they have finished him, they liquidated him. There is no doubt that damage has been done. There are lots of leaders has been killed. But at the end of the day, Neena, as we all know, that the Hezbollah strength structure and the system they function with, they were strong enough to make Israel bleed. And 350 rockets launched in one day, which is even for the Israelis, that 5 million Israeli has to go to the bunkers. because that was a very grave situation for Netanyahu. He cannot last longer. He wanted to regroup his army. They wanted to regroup. They are coming back to their villages, and they're defiant because most of the Shia are being attacked. 540 villages of Shia dominant have been attacked by the Israeli. And you must read it for the future war. But we as an analyst, we look at it from the trends that Israel is looking for a civil war in Lebanon. A moment Israel had a ceasefire with Hezbollah, there was another attack on Syria, on the northern part of Syria, Aleppo,
That's
where Hayat
right.
Tahrir al-Sham, where the terrorist organization moved by Turkey, start attacking the Syrian army, which is a clear indication that the war is not over yet. But this is a sign of relief for everybody that at least the 2006, more than that, the catastrophe have happened to Lebanon has reached to an end, at least for the moment.
For now. Yes, Dr. Alvite, Professor Alvite, if I can bring you in, what do you think the level of Iranian involvement was in this truce? I mean, because did Iran give its blessings? Did it, if it did, because was it out of concern that the Trump administration has hardliners who are not open to, they want to revisit the nuclear deal, so, and Tehran doesn't want to alienate them? Could that be a reason? I mean, or did Tehran just take its hands off the whole negotiation?
I think it's a mix of whatever factors that you have just identified. And my two predecessors have given a very good explanation about how the ceasefire has come to this has seen the light of the day the other night. See, for that matter, if you look at the current scenario right now in the Middle East, and also when we talk about the axis of resistance, which is being spearheaded by Iran, we have seen a continuous elimination of important leaderships, both in Iran as well as in Lebanon. That has somehow weakened, I would say, Iran's outreach in the region, particularly in a country like Lebanon, where they have a major proxy player which has been spearheading this movement against the Israeli occupation inside Gaza Strip and also in West Bank. But when it comes to this ceasefire, particularly, I would say that it definitely would have the blessings of the Iranians and also trying to temper down the tension in the region. But having said this, like Dr. Waiel Awwad and General Saxena has mentioned, that there are factors like the sovereign legitimacy within Lebanon, the presence of Israeli troops along the southern border. This is something which the Lebanese Hezbollah would not like to see for a prolonged period of time. And at the same time, the Israelis are also being mindful of the domestic pressure. And at the same time, the kind of attacks that they have been facing from Hezbollah, despite some of the top-notch leaders being eliminated. We were under the impression that after the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, things would temper down, but that has not been the case. And for Israel, I think it's a matter of great concern for them that they are increasingly seeing this sort of an assault, continuous assault, as Dr. Waiel Awwad mentioned, in cities like Haifa. You also mentioned in your question, in cities like Tel Aviv, the dynamics have changed drastically after the missiles started falling on these very, very important cities. So coming to a question with regard to the Iranian involvement, I would say that they would definitely have some say in this regard in order to make the Hezbollahs coming to terms and conditions and agree on the ceasefire.
Yes. Yes, I agree. General, if I can come to you, the whole basis of this ceasefire agreement, the 13-point formula is based on a UN Security Council resolution 1701, which for the last couple of years, I mean, Israel has had a real problem with, because it says it's never been fully implemented, that Hezbollah has repeatedly crossed the blue line, especially after Israel annexed the Golan Heights. So to my mind, I honestly don't believe, and I agree with all of you, that that this ceasefire will probably last maybe 60 days. But after that, because even if Joe Biden says it's a cessation to all hostilities, don't you think it's wishful thinking? Because Israel's insiders have been sort of forced to agree to the ceasefire, really. Will they actually adhere to it? I mean, Israel itself could retaliate very, very strongly, as they have in the past.
I will use a cliche by saying that this ceasefire deals hangs with a very fragile thread, this fragile thread can break not by one reason, by number of reasons. You hear what the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said, and said very categorically, we will decisively strike Hezbollah if there is any violation of any sort. Now, this violation is of, it can be interpreted in many terms, many things. First, Hezbollah does not dismantle its infrastructure and actually takes it back northwards of the Litani River. Number one. Number two, the record of the Lebanese army in controlling the border south of River Litani has been rather poor. You look at the 2006 war, they have actually failed. The status of UNIFIL, United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, there have been a sort of a reason for increase of hostilities, and came in the eye of the crossfire when they said that their activities are aiding the Hezbollah. What is their role and future role at this point in time? Also, the very fact what Iran has said, that has to be analyzed very carefully. Iran has said that removing or assassinating the Hezbollah leadership only makes it more stronger in number and strength. So what stops Iran from covertly and overtly again arming the Hezbollah in the fashion that they again become a strategic threat? And as the professor rightly brought out, it is a respite, not a resolution. It is a transaction, not a transformation. And today, it is for more reason than one. This is likely, many analysts have already said that this ceasefire is likely to be broken in a manner it was broken earlier and now, for reasons which are more than one, which I want to tell you. I have very little faith President Biden may say anything, or even the Republican camp. You hear the incoming NSA. He says, why the ceasefire has come about? Because the resounding success of President Trump has sent a message: no chaos will be tolerable, and therefore we are turning back to the negotiating table. Anybody can claim credit, but the credit is fragile. It is hanging by a fragile thread. And with the proxies, not only that, don't just think of Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, so many, it is just lying all around. And this ceasefire is anything but very fragile. That's my view.
In fact, I want to bring you in on that, Dr. Awwad. You talked about Syria. There's also Iran-backed militias in Iraq, which, like the Islamic resistance in Iraq, which have been sending drones into Israel. I mean, last week, the drones killed 2 Israeli soldiers and wounded 24 others at a military base in the Golan Heights. So, I mean, there is, and then you've got the new foreign minister of Israel, Gideon Saar, saying that Baghdad, warning Baghdad to end the attack, to end attacks by paramilitaries, really. So, and the Iraqi Prime Minister, Shia Sudani, has appealed to the US to intervene, but that's something that has got a thumbs down from the US ambassador to Iraq. Elena Romansky has basically said that there's no question, because unless Iraq controls these militia, they will be open to attack. But do you see Israel actually opening up another front and actually going into Iraq at all? Not going in, but, attacking Iraq?
Look, Netanyahu can do anything. I mean, the person himself, they said to Pharaoh, what make you a tyranny? He said, there is nobody to stop me. If he had the American administration in his hand, if he has all the might in his hand, if he had all the American weapon in his hand, what does stop him? Nothing can stop him, right? So, but I think the international court, criminal courts have indicted him, put him on the state that he's a criminal, he is wanted by the international community. Israel lost its democratic values, which they keep talking, that they are the only democracy in the Middle East, they're only holding. I mean, the main problem for Israel is Palestine. They wanted to take the whole of Palestine, the West Bank and Gaza, and the war will continue because President Trump had promised the Netanyahu government that he will recognize the annexation of West Bank and Gaza into Israel, which means there is no question of a Palestinian state in the future. And that if that happened, that means we are still at the perpetual provocation for continuous war in the Middle East. And that is what I'm worried about here, because unless and until you address the Palestinian issue, it is very difficult to solve the problem in the Middle East. So therefore, aggressions, occupation, annexation has to stop. So he can go into Lebanon to take the water of Lebanon. Israel has been aiming for the last 100 years. We have all the documents to prove that. They have been pushing for the water of rivers of Litani, Napura, all the Lebanese waters into their territories, as much as they have done at the Golan when they occupied in 1967, and they provoked the Syrian, as the Menachem Begin said in his autobiography book, that we provoked them because we wanted to take the Golan. 34% of the water of Israel come from the Golan. So therefore, the greater Israel map, which goes from Euphrates to Nile, include Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, Palestine, 1/3 of Saudi Arabia, is Sinai Peninsula. All this is part of their game. So if he's been having a coalition of the most extreme right-wing Israeli Zionist group, we can expect the worst to happen. But here you are. You want to live in peace in the neighborhood. You wanted to be part of this, or you wanted to play the police or the watchdog for the United States. So you will be turning into a colonial enclave rather being a state to be recognized and recognizing a state to coexist together called the Palestine. If we do not reach to that sort of comprehensive political framework, might cannot bring peace to this region. So Netanyahu is playing the one-man show. He's doing all this show all by himself, and he will make Israel pay because he's shooting his own feet.
You brought up that was actually a very interesting point, actually. Now that the Saudis and the Iranians have also been coming together, they've been meeting several times. They've had multiple meetings both in Saudi Arabia and in Iran. Are they actually do they have a plan for to push for a two-state formula, or do you think that it's gone past its sell-by date, and that with this Trump administration coming in, that the Israelis will get away with occupying not just the West Bank, but also, obviously Gaza?
Well, as per the international community and UN Security Council, there is no question that they can obliterate or annihilate the whole of Palestine. There has to be a solution of a two-state solution. And that's what even the Saudi Arabia have told the American administration, the previous and the coming administration. We cannot normalize the relation with Israel if we do not have a state of Palestine recognized, whatever you may call it, but they should be acceptable to the Palestinians. If that does not solve the problem, I don't think there is peace in the Middle East. And I think with Trump coming to power, the thing will get more messy in this ground. Trust me, because he's trying to calm down the Ukraine war, but the Biden has played with the ballistic missile hitting inside Russia. That have complicated the situation. But having said that, I would say that the West Asia or the Middle East war is more focused for Israel and for the Israeli lobby who have voted for Trump, which Trump feels that he has to pay the price also for them. So therefore, there could be a major war. And I think most of the Gulf countries, Neena, as you know, you lived in the Gulf, are worried because even if there is an attack on Iran by American troops or by the Israelis, all their installation will be attacked because they have military bases in those countries. And I think global peace and security will be at risk.
That's very interesting, actually, the wider war. This is what I wanted to ask you, Professor Alvite. There was a shocking attack in Abu Dhabi on the Israeli Moldovan rabbi in the UAE by 3 Uzbek Shias, which seems to be part of an Iranian strategy to sort of forestall and wreck the Abraham Accords being taken forward. Because, I mean, the architect of the Abraham Accords was Donald Trump. So this is before he takes office. If skew the Abraham Accord so that it doesn't go forward, definitely would stop Saudi Arabia, which has not gone forward with it like they were supposed to some months ago. So is Iran tapping its various proxies to sort of ensure that there is a game in place by which they, countries like Saudi Arabia do not, and other countries which were supposed to come onto the Abraham Accords will not pursue it?
Well, see, Neena, with regard to what happened in the UAE, particularly related to the killing of the rabbi, And if I would weave together your question about Iran's role in that particular episode, this also talks a lot about Iran's bridge. For the longest time, we have been hearing about the strategic depth Iran has, particularly the Supreme Leader has been talking about the strategic depth Iran has. And to me, that strategic depth is not only in terms of its military capabilities, all of the long-range missile systems that could reach all the way to Tel Aviv or Haifa, but it's also about the presence of various proxy players or individuals who support this sort of a sentiment or ideologies being propagated by the Iranian regime for the last many years. Uh, that they were able to eliminate, kidnap and eliminate, kill the rabbi also speaks a lot about their reach in this part of the world.
That's true. And they've used Uzbek Shias before.
Right. So, and to relate your question with what you had asked to Dr. Waiel Awwad about the proxies in the region, some of the major proxies like, say, Hezbollah or Hamas may be battered for now, weakened for now, but there are also high possibilities of several other proxies mushrooming in the region. And the root goes back to this Israeli-Palestinian conflict, or in order to prove the Iranian axis of resistance is still intact in the region. So with this sort of development in the region, I would say that the normalization process, which Sir also has talked about, with involving some of the Gulf countries with Israel, I think will be stalled for the moment, and that will be something which the incoming Donald Trump administration would like to again restart with. But given the situation in the region right now, they will have to be a little mindful of what kind of backlashes these countries could have within the society, within the country, be it Saudi Arabia, be it UAE, or any other country that would like to normalize relations with Israel. So this entire process of normalization or political rapprochement between Israel and some of the Gulf countries, I think, could be kept in the back burner for some time now.
Also interesting is Hamas itself, because I mean the fact that they've lost their top leadership is obvious. But on the ceasefire, and it's not once, but they've made two statements saying that they are willing to explore a ceasefire with Israel. And it said that that it also could be agreeable to a hostage prisoner swap. I mean, that's happened once before, and then the offer of a ceasefire didn't come through. But I was also told by a friend of mine in Doha that Hamas, after it lost its key, top leadership in Qatar, and Ismail Hania and so on, have been told by the Qataris to shut their office in Doha. And they're trying desperately for the last 2-3 weeks to find another sort of official sort of base for themselves, and it's not happening. So is there any likelihood that that Hamas could be forced into also a ceasefire in Gaza? Because I mean, Prime Minister Netanyahu himself is under pressure to bring the remaining hostages home. And one hears that Israel has reached out to Turkey to reach an exchange deal. I mean, Turkey seems to be playing an even bigger role than Saudi and Qatar. I mean, I'm open to hearing from any one of you on that.
Dr. Waiel Awwad, would you like to come in here?
You just continue. I think you were putting it rightly. I'll go from where you stopped. Please go ahead.
So it's to me.
General Saxena.
Yeah, I was wanting to draw your attention to the statements emanating from Hamas in the last week or two, and now changed statements after Tuesday night ceasefire. At one point, they said we are ready for the ceasefire, which has happened. We are very thankful for our brothers who fought for us, who sacrificed for us, and they have now entered into a truce. We would also like to do that. That was one portion of the statement. There is another streak in the statement which says that Hamas is going to dig in harder and remain there very much as regards the hostages, which is their trump card with them. 101 hostages are with them, and they will like to negotiate on that strong term as far as the ceasefire deal is concerned. But look at the ordinary Hamas messaging today, the narrative itself has become weak today. If you hear the narrative of Hamas, it has led the ordinary Gazians nowhere. Not only they feel left alone and abandoned, they also feel that a greater misery is upon them now because Israelis' effort in the northern portion of northern in the Lebanon now get restricted, and the complete force is now likely to be directed toward them, and the reverses which they have suffered till 44,000 people killed.
Yeah.
The women and children mostly, the narrative itself, has the messaging of the Hamas is not as lucrative as it used to be in
It's
October.
not as aggressive as it was before. Yeah, you're right.
Now,
You're absolutely right.
on this Israeli side, I want to just make a point. On 7th October 2023, the world rallied behind Israel. Our own Prime Minister said that Israel has suffered a terrorist attack. But the
Mm.
way Israel went about decimating the civilians and the children and the innocents in Gaza, and slowly the whole world opinion mobilized against them. There was a time just prior to October 2023 when Saudi Arabia was very close to normalizing relations with Israel. Today,
Yep.
what is the state? They say no way, as Dr. Wade has brought out, no way unless and until you accept a two-state solution, a state, a home for the Palestine, no way. Why is it that Iran is coming closer to Saudi Arabia, as you are saying? One is Shia, one is Sunni. Wow. Because they say we will not let Saudi Arabia drift towards Israel in a manner of rapprochement in the fashion which was happening, which is as it is getting cut. And with this
Yeah.
third factor coming in, the Hamas is now on a very difficult wicket and a dilemma. What to do now?
Do you agree with that, Dr. Awad? Do you
Well,
think that
I
Hamas
feel
has got it back to the wall?
I don't think it got it to the back to the wall because you see the problem. I think General will agree with me. It's a combat forces have not taken a full-fledged war as we see in traditional war. What Israel has been doing for ages, for 1 year or 14 months, is attacking from the air. The moment Israel moved into the ground, they have suffered enough inside Gaza, despite the fact that they are still making them bleed till date. By the way, there are lots of ambush, there are lots of killing of the Israeli soldier. This is at one. At the Lebanese front also was a total destruction, and Israel could not even last for 24 hours, despite their attacking the UNIFIL, penetrating from the weaker side, going from the places where Hezbollah not even there, even attacking or hijacking a civilian citizen of Lebanon where Hezbollah does not exist there. So I think if we understand politics of the Middle East, let us put it in black and white. It's not Hamas, it's not Hezbollah, it is Lebanon, it is Palestine, which Israel's ambition is after. Leave aside the resistance. If Hamas finished, there will be a resistance coming up, different name. Hamas came to existence against occupation. Hezbollah came to existence against Israeli occupation. Israel moved out of Lebanon because of the force that they have been made to by force, by fighting them, the Lebanese, they moved out. In a similar fashion, the Palestinians are trying with Hamas. Hamas is not in a position because they look like they are in a pressure cooker. They are all tied in nose from the sea, from the sky, from the land. They are unable to move except underground. So all these 2.5 million Palestinians, 100% displaced by Israelis, and more than 150 killed and injured, as the general said, and mostly children. And I think these are a message to the rest of the world that the war is beyond Hamas, and it is the Palestinians who are nowhere to run away. None of the countries are willing to take them, nor the Israelis are willing to take them. If Israel called itself upholding the human rights and saving civilians, shift them to their occupied territories, which you took, clear Hamas, and then bring them back. But the question here arises, will they do it? No. The question, they want the Palestinians to pay the price, and they are forcing a collective punishment against the Palestinians. The amount of killing by the war is worse than the famine, the killing by even the food aids, which they are declining to give the Palestinians. In fact, today or yesterday, for the last 1 week, we are watching sugar bags put sand inside and no sugar. So therefore, you can understand what kind of mass deception they are doing to the world to tell you that they're feeding the Palestinians. Palestinians dying of hunger more than dying of the bomb, which has been bombing on them more than the Second World War, more than Nagasaki and Hiroshima, more and the war on Ukraine. And I think it will continue with as long as the Americans keep sending those huge bombs, and more than 85,000 bombs bomb have been thrown on Gaza. I don't know how much they can.
Do you think that the Trump administration will continue to support and back Israel the way that the Biden administration has militarily?
I think there has to be a solution out. There is no question out. Either they have to kill the 2.5 million Palestinians and turn their guns against West Bank and East Jerusalem, or they are going to find a sort of liquidating Hamas and finding a political solution, bringing the Palestinian Authority and turning into a civil war or communal war in Lebanon, in Syria, and in Palestine.
That's very interesting. Professor Alvite, if I could come to you, the key question today is basically on Iran's nuclear program. It's the target of Israel's attacks in October. Apparently, Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that Israel destroyed a part of a nuclear weapons facility that makes plastic explosives at the Parchin military complex. His exact quote is, "It's not a secret. There's a specific component in their nuclear program that was hit." Iran has said that the Israeli strikes hit its radar and that its nukes activities are peaceful. So does Israel and the US have a good idea of what Iran's nuclear arsenal is like? And General Saxena, I'd like you to take on that answer
Yeah.
after Professor Alvite.
Yeah.
Neena, when it comes to the Iranian nuclear program, it's a very interesting issue which is going on right now. We have seen a little bit of this skirmishes between the two sides beginning from April this year. The kind of a deterrence both had exhibited, targeting each other's installations. But when it comes to the Iranian nuclear program, I would say that it's very different from what they have done in Iraq in 1981, or also what they have done in in 2007 against Syria. Because when we look at the Iranian nuclear program, they are very, very advanced and also very dispersed. Particularly the locations where the Iranian nuclear facilities are situated. It's going to be extremely difficult for any country, let alone Israel, to completely destroy the Iran's nuclear facilities unless and until they have a very coordinated efforts with some of the major powers or military powers like the US. That is one thing. To dismantle this Iranian nuclear program, I think would require an extraordinarily, complex military operation. That is something which we have to see whether that's going to be the case anytime soon, even after Donald Trump comes to the office in January next year. And then for this kind of installations, which the Iranians already have, you would need a very, very sophisticated and very advanced weapon system, something like MOAB, the mother of all bombs that was used in 2017 in Afghanistan. But if the Israelis are willing to go that far is something that we will have to see. But having this sort of a capability for Iranian will also be a deterrence, and that is something that has been the concern for the Israelis for the longest time when it comes to the Iranian nuclear program. So whether Israel would really target, we have seen when that attack happened in April this year, there were lots of discussions about the near possibility of either sides using their nuclear facilities. Yeah. But that is not the case. That is not the case so far. But there are many complexities when it comes to targeting the nuclear sites within Iran. It's not something which they have done with Iraq and Syria, as I mentioned earlier. So I would keep it at that point. Yeah.
General Saxena, do you think that the Joe Biden's administration, it specifically asked Israel not to attack nuclear sites during the strikes? And US President, he said that he didn't support the attacks on Iran's nuclear oil facilities, but Israel went ahead anyway. And do you think that Trump would take a harder line when he takes office? Because he's reportedly told Netanyahu, hit the nuclear first and worry about the rest later, which is quite a a dangerous statement to make, a very, I mean, a red flag, so to speak.
I will take on from where the professor just left and talk about the word dismantling as regards the Iranian nuclear program as of today is actually a very difficult word to start with. Now, if you, I will not like to start all the way from 1957 when the civilian nuclear program started. I will come straight to the Iranian nuclear deal, the joint GCPO, no? Joint Comprehensive Plan of
General, can I just butt in for a minute? Can you sit back a little bit because there's no light on your face? Yeah, yeah, that's better.
I am saying that the whole thing started because Iraq was suspected of closing into a nuclear weapon. All that I am skipping. I am coming directly to the Iranian nuclear deal. It said four things very clearly. It said that the nuclear stockpile or the enriched uranium stockpile is to be reduced from 10,000 kg to 300 kg minus 97% reduction. Number
Yeah,
two, they said
correct.
the percentage of enrichment has to be only 3.67%, which is 3 to 5% is required for the nuclear fuel and the civilian. There were, at that time, I'm talking about 2018. At that time,
Yeah.
2015, sorry. At that time, Iran had both first generation centrifuge and the advanced centrifuge. How many first generation? 19,138. They were to be reduced to a figure of 6,104. Out of this, only 5,060 were allowed to enrich uranium, that also to the percentage which is laid down. And they were to subject themselves to strict checking by the international watchdog, by
Mm,
the surveillance mechanism, and the two facilities, Natanz and Fordo. 24/7 surveillance with state-of-the-art technology. All this was set out in 2015. But when US,
why did the US then scrap that deal?
yeah, why? Because they said, as per the, it leaves many into a perplexed doubt as to why. And there are opinions for and against it. In the address, you hear the video of President Trump on 18th November 2018 when he's scraping the deal. They say he starts with the sentence, Iran is the state sponsor of terrorism.
Mm,
They have not agreed, they have not respected the nuclear deal of restricting their stockpile enrichment and so on. They have supported terrorist organizations like Hamas, Hezbollah, ISIS, and Qaeda. They have attacked our embassies, they have attacked our people and assets abroad. And therefore, there is no point in going ahead with the deal. That video is a remarkable statement. And off the cuff, he says, no, we are walking out from that. Imagine the other three. In three never walked out. UK, France, Germany, they're not walked out. In fact, as late as Tuesday or in November 2024, they have censored 22nd November. They have issued a censor resolution saying that Iran has not only violated the 2018, 2015 Iranian nuclear deal. There is a need to now limit. We cannot dismantle now. They've gone too far. Only
But
limit.
if Iran itself has said that does not seek nuclear weapons,
Yeah, it says,
even though evidence to the contrary has been
yeah,
provided by
yeah,
IAEA, the International Atomic
yeah,
Energy
yeah, very
Agency,
much.
it has provided saying that Iran only needs a week to 10 days to go
Yeah.
nuclear, to weaponize
It,
its nukes.
Madam, it has said very clearly our nuclear enrichment is now at 60%. But after this censoring resolution has been passed, a statement has come from Iran. They say we have already activated our advanced centrifuges to take our enrichment forward. Now we have reached a stage. Now somebody was talking of dismantling and destroying. We are far away from destroying. Natanz, Fordo, Arak, Bushehr, you name it. There are so many nuclear facilities, enrichment facilities. They're talking of Perchin. They only destroyed some portion of the plastic factory which was making the plastic explosive, which covers the nuclear shell and makes the
Yeah,
detonator sit.
that's
So
very interesting,
the,
actually. That's
the
in
point,
Talegan too, is what I was told.
yeah, the point which I'm trying to say is that there is no other way. 18th October 2025 is the last date of this agreement. Either you enforce the snapback deal, in which the whole sanctions are put back, or bring Iran back to another fresh nuclear agreement. Because if you want Iran to not go the nuclear weapon way, this is the only way, the only window of opportunity which is present now. And that is why you hear the statement of the new president of Iran. What does he say? He says, I want to remove the doubts and ambiguities in the mind of three. Who are the three? British, France, and Germany.
France,
That they
Germany,
are
and
not
Britain.
going the nuclear way. Because what is hurting Iran? What is hurting Iran is not our opinion. What is hurting Iran are the crippling sanctions, which he wants it to be removed. And they say, no, no, President Trump says, okay, we'll not let them export oil. If you do not let them export oil, there are many teapot refineries of China which will let the export still happen. You bulldoze your way through, and the Iran will show more retaliation. Only rapprochement, only negotiation, only letting them see the way and removing the perception of the threat. Remember that Iran has got this deterrent value against whom? Professor brought it very clearly. It is between Israel and Lebanon, bigger players. It is not Hezbollah, or Hamas or Houthis. It's a big game. This
No,
game of
The
deterrence.
other point that I wanted to make is also Israel's nuclear, arsenal. No one talks about it. No one says that it's aimed at a particular country or it's in being put on hold. What is the actual status, Dr. Awwad? Do you know? Could you tell our viewers about that?
thank you. I think you brought it at the beginning of your program that the two nuclear states, you stated already, a state declared the nuclear, but nobody talks about it, called Israel, and a state which is ambitious to be a nuclear, but there are enough UN Security Council resolution against it. And the irony of the matter is we talk only of Iran and nuclear ambition, but we don't talk of Israel and nuclear arsenal, which are having more than 100 nuclear heads available till now, and that already there was a resolution 487 in 1981 to put Israel nuclear program on the inspection of the international nuclear agency, but it never happened. Why? Because we all know that who is supporting the Israeli program, and they kept it concealed it from the eyes of the public. Even when a minister of Israel mentioned that they want to use the nuclear weapon against Hamas or against Hezbollah, he was shut down and he was removed. So let's remember that secrecy retained because of the global support of Israel that nobody wanted to talk about. But they can talk of Iran, they can deceive the public of Iraq that they're having a nuclear program. They can talk of Libya that they had a program and supported by Pakistan. And all we know that who made this nuclear plan for Iraq, for Iran, for Libya is the French and the American and the German. So let us be very frank that the colonial mindset of those colonial power who still have the remnants of occupation of these areas are still thinking that they can think on those lines of how to reoccupy this part of the world under any kind of pretext. Iran is changing its policy toward the nuclear because of the current scenario, because of the attack on it, because its national security is at risk, and they may change because till a decade back, they were saying no. Till 2015, when the American pulled, they continue, the inspection continued, but they refused to go nuclear. They can go nuclear. Yes, they can go nuclear. They will go nuclear if they know they are under tremendous threat. If Israel attack any nuclear site of Iran, then Iran is a nuclear. That means even then, the ballistic missile of Iran will hit Dimona, the nuclear site of Israel, and it will be a catastrophe for all of us. Who will suffer? The regional countries, which is Syria, Lebanon, and all, because the radiation will be catastrophe for everybody. We will all die. But if we realize that we wanted, when we talk of a Middle East free of nuclear weapons, Israel was the only country who refused to participate even in one discussion on this regard. So let us
That's a very good
talk in
point,
terms,
actually.
when you have power, you can dictate the terms of your position. But as I always say, might is not right, but right is might.
Neena,
Excellent.
Very well put. Professor
Excellent.
Alvite, could I bring you in
yeah,
on
now
this?
this is with regard to your question about the strikes to destroy the Iranian nuclear facilities. I've just given my initial remark in that regard. But see, even in the best, in a best case scenario where military strikes effectively destroy the key Iranian nuclear facilities, the concerns can be that the knowledge base surrounding the uranium enrichment or the reactor technology and whatever we call the fuel cycle for sustaining the fusion would continue to remain intact. So that is something which which the Israelis or any other adversaries of Iran will have to be worried about. And eliminating that kind of a knowledge would require a very prolonged, sustained covert operations inside Iranian scientific community, which would be a very strenuous effort on the part of the Israelis or again any of its allies that would want to destroy this sort of a nuclear technical know-how within Iran. So I would say that this is going to be a very complicated issue when it comes to striking off the Iranian nuclear facilities. And as mentioned by, again, Dr. Waiel Awwad about the repercussions, the nuclear clashes or the ballistic missile clashes could have on the region-wide. We already have discussed that in around April, May, and also around October, when the attacks had happened between the two sides, that in the case the Israelis strike off any of the nuclear facilities, or if they do a nuclear warfare against Iran, the Iranians will not remain quiet. There's also a high possibility of them targeting some of the strategic locations in the Gulf region also, which will pull in the entire Gulf region into into this conflict. That is, to me, a very serious issue.
But it's also very interesting that Iran has not struck back after Israel rained all those missiles on Iran. I found that quite intriguing, General. What are they? Why are they holding back from a retaliation, a full-scale retaliation, at this point in time?
If you should hear what their president and what the supreme leader has also said and what their president also said. After this agreement also, of the ceasefire agreement also, they have said very clearly, Iran reserves the right to revenge or strike back, taking revenge of the strikes which happened on 26 October. So they will choose the place and time. And don't forget that they may not be having a very strong air force, I agree. But Iran has got today, they have got missiles, Shejil, 2,500 kilometers, Khaibar, Haj Qasim, Shahin 1, Zolfagar. Their missiles from 1,400 to 2,500 kilometer range they can reach. They don't have a strong airstrike force, agreed, but they have a very strong missile force which can carry warheads of various varieties at various speeds, that even have an hypersonic missile. They will strike at the time of their choosing. If you permit, not forgot. I was wanting to talk about the win-win and lose-lose. Let me be the voice of the three losers today. The three
Uh-huh.
losers of this agreement of this year. One is the ordinary guardians I talked about. They're left alone, and you hear the ladies and the women and children talking about that, how they have been left alone and why the deal has not covered them. Another
Hmm.
loser is the ordinary Israelis. They are not only crying about the hostage release of 101, the northern Israelis are saying 60,000 of them who have been displaced, that you had promised the removal of the threat for our livelihood and our stay. Hamas, Hezbollah is only weakened, marginalized. Then very much. Why didn't you finish the job? You have deceived us. You have betrayed us. You have taken the deal in a manner which is not beneficial for our survivor. And what about the ordinary this thing? The people who have, he says, I have celebrated my second birthday of my uncle as a hostage. I don't know whether he's alive or he Look at the
Yeah,
cries of them, cries of them.
quite tragic.
They are the losers. I want to become the voice of those losers and put it on record that now what is the Benjamin Netanyahu says? No, no, no. What are you talking? Hamas is different. There it is border issue. There it is our security. There it is a hostage issue. There they have killed us and started the attack, started the war. But the voice of the losers also must not be lost in the din. It has to be spoken about. That's what I wanted to say.
That's very interesting. On the question, if I could come back to this two-state solution, Dr. Awad, there is a meeting that is going on in Brussels that is said to be, happening this week, between Saudi Arabia and a couple of other players, but neither Palestine nor Israel, of course, is represented. So, is there a possibility? I mean, you've spoken from your heart about it, but is there a possibility that, after being dead for over 30 years, there could be pressure from, groups like Saudi Arabia and Turkey and so on and so forth for a two-state solution? And the other issue I also wanted to raise is that, going forward, all this rhetoric from both sides, I still see, could we see a kind of a lowering of tensions for the next couple of months until the Trump administration takes office?
Well, I think in terms of the two-state solution, let's look at the Israeli situation currently. I mean, there have been people are moving out of Israel. More than 40% of the Israelis are no more interested to stay back in Israel because that's not the dreamland they were hoping for. The settlers who have come, the extreme settlers belonging to those extreme parties and the evangelist Zionist church in US, they have come and they have realized that they have been killing, and the killing spree have turned even many Israeli soldiers to either go into a suicide or either go back, refuse to join for the reserve as in the army, and or also asking, because the amount of killing also turned many of them vegetarian, by the way, because the smell of the meat of the dead bodies of the Palestinians have turned them into a vegetarian, that they are unable to touch the meat. So they can imagine the situation for the Israelis they are suffering. And now 59% of them are seeking to go back because they have a dual citizenship to go back to their native country. So I think that is one of the issues the government of Israel has to address if seriously they wanted to live in peace in this region and coexist with the other partner. And they cannot always blame it on the Palestinians that they don't have a leader or a president to talk about. Let's talk of Oslo Agreement. We all agreed on it, 5-year interim period. It never happened. They never give the Palestinians because Netanyahu torn the Oslo Agreement, throw it in the dustbin. He said there is no state of Palestine, and also there is Ishaq Rabin got killed by one of his activists. So these are the issues where the right wing took over the most public opinion of Israel, where 55% previously were happy to have peace with the Arab. Now there is only 5 or 10% less among the Israelis who wanted to live in peace with the Arabs. So therefore, I think these are the issues Israel has to address itself, and the international community has to put lots of pressure, because Netanyahu in power, there is no question of a two-state solution. Netanyahu, either he'll have a coup or he will go to the jail. Then we may find that the Israeli thinking in terms of giving the Palestinians some of a breathing area so that they can woo back at the Abraham Accord and bring back into the more reluctant Arab state, including Saudi Arabia, into that fold. But I think such kind of game does not work anymore. There is a question here, there is a grave, there is a suffering. The West Bank is also bleeding. More than 12,000 people have been in jail, more than 1,500 being killed, more houses have been destroyed. And I think these are the issues one has to address, and we need to find a way of putting pressure on both sides. And I think the Palestinians have enough pressure. It is only the Israelis have to come in terms and accept that the Palestinians do exist. They cannot finish them. There is no question of finishing 6 million Palestinians living in the occupied territory.
Well, I hope that your words are, do come true. Professor Alvite, would you like to comment on that? Because final concluding remarks on what you have seen to what you think will happen in the next 60 days?
Yeah, it's as mentioned by everybody, it's very fragile. Israel has clearly mentioned that it has all the rights to retaliate back in case any attacks are being conducted on its soil.
I mean, apart from the ceasefire, do you see a peace deal? Will Israel be forced to eat crow and accept a two-state solution?
No, for that, there are far more difficult discussions which are, pending. There are 4 to 5, main issues when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, pertains to Jerusalem, then right of return, the water sharing, the border demarcation. All of them are still very, very, in that position where there is no clarity on what's to be done in that regard.
And you see the Iran-Israel sort of, this confrontation taking a sort of a,
See, I think
quieter.
I again, it's very I've also lived in the Middle East for a couple of years, and it's very, I would say, again, we have served from the region, and who knows the region, of course, in and out. It's very difficult to predict what's going to happen in the Middle East even for the next 24 hours. But again, if I have to make some assessment with regard to what's going to happen with regard to the security and stability, the region is still very much on tenterhooks right now. But are we going to see a major flare-up or in terms of a major confrontation between some of these players that we have been discussing? Uh, that is something that needs to be seen because I don't see anytime soon that there's going to be a major flare-up between Iran or with Israel at the moment. The Iranians are also very mindful about certain things that their domestic, economic condition, the pressures that they are coming under from the citizens. They are also looking very carefully and watching very minutely about the preparations that have already been made by countries like US.
That's right. And they've reached out to the IAEA, with Rossi visiting Tehran, and plus France, Germany, and Britain are,
Right.
in talks with them.
So for now, they would not like to escalate the tension further. So we will have to see how the other players would react in the times to come. So that's where I would keep it, as my.
General concluding remarks.
Yeah,
I've
I
got
will.
1 minute left.
Yeah, in that 1 minute, I will use the wise words of our Dr. Awad. He made some fantastic points. I want to reiterate them. The first point which I want to say is so long as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is driving the show, two things are impossible. One is a cessation of hostilities, number one. Number two, any hope of getting peace to stay for a longer time. That is my first point. Second point I wish to say, unless and until the world, I'm not talking of world of only Trump, I'm talking of the world somehow puts a pressure strong enough post Benjamin Netanyahu or pre Benjamin Netanyahu to accept the truth that 6 million Palestinians also will exist somewhere. They have to breathe somewhere. Whether it is two state, whether it is some place dedicated from the occupied territories, where it is something, there is no way that Middle East will see the end of Middle East will see respite. And this deal hanging in fragile balance, nobody can say what will happen in next 24 hours, as Dr. Alvite said very clearly. What to talk of 2 months, next 24 hours, nobody can say anything. Only thing is we can hope that this 60 days pass off with a quieter northern border. Some sense prevails in Benjamin Netanyahu's head so that something happens with the Hamas rapprochement and something happens on the front of hostages and some peace return. And the truth and the undeniable truth of two-state solution, call it by any name, I'm not talking two-state, is drilled into Israel. There is no way that peace is there.
That's very interesting. In fact, the Iranian foreign minister Abbas Araghchi has denied this very strongly. But there are very persistent reports that Iran's ambassador to the UN, Amir Saeed Irvani, has met Trump's, best buddy, Elon Musk, to defuse US-Iran tensions. So we still don't know where it's going to go. The ceasefire, I hope it holds. And that we hope that Gaza also finds some kind of where the UNRWA and UNIFIL will be allowed to come back into Gaza and provide food and medicines to the people who are suffering there. Either way, right? Me, from listening to all of you, doesn't look as if either Israel or Iran is going to back off. Their long game continues, which is to destroy each other. And thank you very much, General Saxena. Thank you very much, Dr. Awwad. And thank you, Professor Alvite, for taking part in the show. Thank you, viewers. Please do click on the New Indian Express website and watch and share Global Express. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Lovely listening.